Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Welcome to the Life You Crave podcast. Today, I have Sara Chambers on the show. So everybody, you're going to just have to take a deep breath because this bio is going to blow your socks off. Sara Chambers is a brand strategist, TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and the CEO of Ellie and Nora Creative, a full-service agency that builds brave, bold, brag-worthy brands for entrepreneurs who are ready to lead with purpose and power. With a background in marketing, PR, and communication for nonprofits and a variety of personal and lifestyle brands, Sara has spent nearly 2 decades helping thought leaders clarify their message, amplify their mission, and own their space. She's also the founder of Chicks Who Give a Hoot, a nonprofit mobilizing women entrepreneurs as a force for good through media, mentorship, and community. You can totally see why I had her on the show today. The very first thing I said to her is, you clearly don't sleep, do you, Sara? So thank you so much for coming on this show. I am so excited to talk with you today about all that you do and bring into our world.
Oh my goodness. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me in.
So you do so much, so many things. Tell me, for my listeners out there who are listening right now, if they were to listen to the entire episode today, what would they be walking away with? How might their lives be changed? I know it's heavy.
No, it's great. I love it. I love a big, juicy question. And what an incredible way to bring people in and get them hooked and really bought in for the rest of our conversation.
Yeah.
If I had to make a prediction, I would say that you can expect to feel differently about yourself. You can walk away from this conversation feeling empowered. And I feel like that can be a little bit of a cliche or a little bit of a buzzword, but I really want your listeners to have permission to stand in their own power and to define themselves up against their own measure of success.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Their own measure of success. I just have to jump in right there. How do you define success? What does that even mean? You know, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's not like a singular definition. I think it is something that is regularly evolving with me as a human, and I think with all of us. And I think that we need to allow room for adaptability and flexibility as we kind of move into the next seasons of our lives. So what defined success for me, even just like last year, is not what is defining it in this moment. And I think that requires us to be very tuned in to ourselves and to make sure that we are measuring kind of ourselves against ourselves rather than ourselves against everyone else.
Yes. Wow. That's a tall order, right? Like that really requires a deep self-knowing. So tell us a little bit about your work. And I understand that your work is really rooted in this idea that as women, we are the architects of change, that we have something worth offering and we have big voices, and it's a matter of feeling empowered and confident enough to really go out into the world and live it and give it. So tell us a little bit about your work. Where did it all begin? How did you become Sara Chambers? And how did you end up with this crazy long bio of all these amazing ways that you work in the world?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. There are lots of like arms or like legs or tentacles to my work, but I think that you really just nailed it in the way that you described it, because the red thread, if you will, or like the common denominator through everything that I do is potentially working with as many women as possible to help them better understand themselves and their own brilliance and their own light and their own impact and what they're trying to do in the world, and then clearly communicate it so that other people might understand them and connect with that. And I think that really is the common denominator between my branding work, because I mostly work with female entrepreneurs. We help to clarify their message and make sure that they are not building and architecting a message or a brand that is built or predicated on anyone else, but rather themselves. And I think that authenticity, again, can be a little bit of a cliche and a buzzword, but really that's what we're all after, is being the truest, most aligned version of ourselves, and then making sure that other people understand that well so that they can really be a magnet to those opportunities that are a good fit for them. And so I think that that message really underscores everything that I do across the branding agency, but then also over into all of the other work that I do with the nonprofit, my own podcast, and my book. And every time I've ever stepped on stage, it's how can I help women align more truly to themselves and then communicate that clearly.
Why is that a need, do you think? Like, where does that need come from? How did you figure out that that was even a thing that needed mending, that needed to be addressed?
Mm. I wish there was some like line in the sand kind of moment for that, but really, like most things, I think it's a slow evolution into my own becoming. And over many years of doing creative and strategic work, making observation and noticing pattern over pattern, and then realizing and slightly adjusting myself and orienting myself towards this solution, because you start to see the same thing over and over again. I like to say, like, we are all beautiful, unique, wonderful unicorns. And then also at the same time, we all typically struggle with the exact same thing. And especially in the world of branding, we're intersecting my own truth and my own story with business objectives. And so sometimes that can get really muddy, and figuring out how do I tell the truest, most aligned story of who I am and attract those aligned opportunities. But how do I also make sure that that is sound and strategic and on solid ground? And I've come to find that I don't think that those are working against each other. They're not mutually exclusive. They really do work in tandem with one another, because when we are the bravest, truest, most authentic version of ourselves, and we pair that with our big goals and our big strategies for building businesses and lives and brands that we really want, then other people are locking into that. Other people are magnetized and attracted to that. And that is the only thing that we ever really have in a world full of people who are out potentially doing the exact same work that you are. The only thing that any of us has is our own personality and quirks and lived experience and bold point of views.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to learn how to leverage that more and how to tell a truer story.
I love that. One of my absolute best friends and also business coach, business mentor, her name is Jessica Miller, and she says often that your energy is your edge. And I've loved that because, like you said, everybody, we're all kind of, I shouldn't say we're all, but yes, there's somebody out there who's doing exactly what you're doing and, doing it differently or doing it exactly the same. Why would somebody, and I hear this from women all the time, well, why would somebody hire me for that? Why me? And it's like, because you're you. That's exactly why, right? Like, I want to work with you as opposed to working with this other person for whatever reason. Your energy is sometimes what we buy, right?
100%.
It's the distinguishing factor between, do I want this brand or this brand? It's like, oh, I don't know. I like the feel and the energy of this one, so I'm going to go with this one.
Yeah.
So I love that. But, you said at the beginning when I asked you about success, you said that, it's kind of ever evolving, which I never really thought about success in that way. And I like that idea. I'm wondering everything that you just explained about alignment, and if alignment and authenticity is also ever changing. And as a brand strategist, you help specifically women, correct? Like you're working with female identified folks.
Most of the time. Yeah.
Most
Every
of the
now
time.
and then a dude sneaks in, but I would say a good 98% of the time.
Yes. Okay. So you're helping women to really craft their messaging around who they are. But like success, I don't want to say our identity shifts, but what we're aligned with too can shift over time. So does that mean that people kind of have to constantly be coming back to do brand strategy work over and over and over again? Or does the brand stay consistent? Because I'm thinking about, we were talking about that intersection, right, of who I am and what I do and how that can get muddy, as you said.
Yeah.
So does the brand
I think it's a fair
messaging have to
question.
change?
It's a totally fair question. And I think that unfortunately there isn't like a cut and dry, this is how it is 100% of the time. I think that when I'm going to briefly scooch over to personal branding because there is a little bit of a distinction between personal and corporate branding.
Yeah.
In a corporate brand, we are building a brand around a business entity that is, you know, connected to the founder, but lives kind of in its own. And we're looking to personify that particular brand to exist as its own. And there is some distance that we kind of create between the human and the corporate brand. But if we scooch our eyes over to personal brands,
Yep.
then those have a lot of similarities to building a corporate brand, but a lot of important distinctions. And partly to what you were saying, I think that there are some elements of getting to the core of a person that is going to allow us to anchor a brand in that is likely not going to change or not change very much from year to year, season to season. The things that
Mm,
you care about and the impact you're trying to make is the direction that you're headed, but what kind of shifts is like the how you do that and
yeah.
the potentially the offer in which you deliver that, the stage that you take, the business that you build, the book that you write, the course that you do, the thing that you produce, if you will, is always going to be shifting and fluctuating. But I've found that when you really do a good job of digging, when you really figure out what people are like aiming for and what their North Star is, that a lot of times there is some flexibility in that for sure. Like who we are and what we want in one season does change. But if we're doing the good work of figuring out where we're headed and what we're really after and what really matters to us, then I think that we can anchor into a North Star and feel
Mm.
very confident marching boldly in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so reassuring. It really, as a business owner, right? Because it changes, it can, but you're absolutely right. It's like the vision and the mission stay the same, but sometimes the how it's dressed or how we're thinking about it or the experiences that we've had from year to year might shift how we are approaching it, but the mission
Yeah.
and vision stay the same. So
Yeah.
do you, when you work with women, you work with entrepreneurs, and when we were first chatting in the beginning of the hour here together, it sounded like you were saying that you help women to really first identify what is the message. Is that correct? People don't always come to you with like, "Oh, I know exactly what my messaging is. I just need you to help me craft it." Is that right? How does it work?
Yeah, that is true. I think that a lot of times people will come either way. I mean, it depends. No one is ever entering into this work exactly the same as the previous person entering into this work. So some people do come in and they say, "This is exactly who I am and I just need help crafting that message." And you probably won't be surprised to figure out that most of the time that isn't where we land
Right,
the plane
right. Yeah.
after we take them through this process. Some people are very sure, and usually going through this work, we evolve that message. And maybe we're not, ending up too terribly far from where they are, but we've articulated it. We've, really figured out a way to streamline that message and make it make sense in the context of building a bigger brand ecosphere. And then a lot of times people come in and they say, I have no idea. I have no idea how to I have all these
Mm,
ideas and I'm multi-passionate and I want to do this and I want to do that.
yeah.
And I have absolutely no idea how to package that all together and say it in a succinct way. And a lot of times people will come kind of alluding to what we were speaking about earlier is, man, I just feel like I'm saying the same thing as everyone else in the world who's doing what I do. I mean, even
Yep.
for me, there are millions, I'm sure, of brilliant brand designers.
Yeah.
And what I like to say is that I want to just go ahead and assume. I know this isn't true, but we're going to just, for a minute, we're going to pull ourselves away from the reality and assume for a moment that everyone doing this work is doing a good job, that
Hmm.
they're doing quality work, that they're offering it at a fair price, that they're doing it with integrity, and that they're showing up in the best of themselves, right? So, if we look across a landscape of an industry and every single person is doing good work with integrity at a fair cost and doing good by their clients, then what is it that makes someone wish to work with me as opposed to working with them? Because we can't lean on things like good customer service anymore when
Right.
that's not a differentiator. So how can
Right.
we actually identify what is the thing that makes you different? How do you show up in the world uniquely? What is your bold point of view? What is it that you are for and what is it that you're against? And how can we clearly and succinctly communicate that so that other people can identify with that message and either be attracted to it or repelled by it.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So repelled by it. So
Hmm.
my clients, like yours, my listenership is overwhelmingly female, female identified. And the idea of taking a bold stance is one that I think that we often like the idea of,
Yep.
but as women, we are plagued with the whole, kind of likability curse in that society rewards women for being
Yep. Palatable,
quiet. Yes, and
likable,
likable. And
appeasing.
the minute
Yep.
that we kind of step out of line, and it's not even just the likability for so many of my clients. We work around the relationship with self-image and food and body.
Yeah.
So many of my clients struggle with their own self-image and their kind of lack of confidence in showing up fully as who they are. And so this idea of, oh my gosh, in order to be a successful business person, I have to be willing to repel people. It's like
Mm.
it's antithetical to what we
Yep.
believe. I mean, like I said, in theory, I think we're like, oh yeah, fine. But when it really comes down to it, we're like, oh, but I want everybody to like me, right?
Oh my
How do you
gosh, you
address
nailed it.
that?
You nailed it. I have so many things to say about this. I'm like, where do I start?
I know.
So, the first thing that I want to say is that I've realized after years and years and years of doing this work that you can't really divorce the idea of building a brand with personal development because it's exactly
Mm,
what you've just said. That when you choose to build a brand, when you choose to say, this is who I am, you put a line in the sand, a stake in the ground, if you will, and you're naturally going to have people that are not going to identify with that are not going to like it, that are going to misunderstand it, that are not going to be attracted to that message. And in order for you to be able to show up fully in your brand, to fully embody the boldness, the realness, the truth of the brand that is what we've potentially built together, you have to have regulated your nervous system. You
yes.
have to have found your own grounding and your own self sovereignty. And that is work that is done in the inside. That's an inside job. And
Yeah.
so the very nature of building this brand when I work with clients is a little bit triggering. And so I have found that through this process, we are not just building a really important business asset. I mean, do not get me wrong. Like our design is kick ass. Like we're going to give you amazing
Right.
assets and
Yeah.
design and logos and all of that stuff. But I have just realized that on the other side of this work is an immense personal
Yeah.
transformation because I
Yeah.
can deliver you all of this amazing design and these incredible assets and this strategy and this message and this amazing website and media and all the things that we do. And if you are not ready in your own body to fully step into that light, to be
Mm,
seen in it and to embody that brand, then it's going to sit in a Google Drive and it's not
yeah.
going to do you any good. So
Totally.
we have to make sure that our clients are walking that line between building this strategic and thoughtful brand business investment and also making sure that they are becoming the human that can fully embody that brand.
So how do they do that? I mean, how do
Million-dollar
you take
question.
how do you take women through that?
Oh, I think that, well, I don't know how familiar you are with the Enneagram, if at all, but I'm an Enneagram 8 and I'm the challenger. And so naturally, the way that I show up is lovingly inviting people into the conflict, lovingly in a safe space, inviting them to face some of the things that maybe they haven't faced before. I think one of my superpowers is the power of observation and
Mm,
reflection.
mm,
And I can kind of sniff out somebody's bullshit in a second and reflect that back to them. And so
mm,
working with me is never going to be this like fluffy, easy process, but I promise that at the end of it, it is transformative and you will be an entirely different person. And so I really did also want to really make that connection between brand and body. And that is quite honestly what drove my most recent arm of work in my book. I just launched a book called Do It Fat, an unapologetic guide to taking up
yes.
more space regardless of your size just about a month ago.
Yes.
And we hit bestseller in 2 categories, which I'm really proud of. And that book is the thing that I didn't want to talk about and the thing that I knew I absolutely had to. And I'm so proud of the work that I've done on inside of that space between brand and body, because I realized, not just my clients, but also myself, is that when we want to embody that brand, like I was talking about, we build this beautiful, incredible, authentic, magnetic brand, and we want to embody it. It requires us to show up in our physical selves. And I started to witness how many women, myself included, had these incredible brands just bubbling at the surface. And the second that we had to show up in our physical selves, the second that we had to take our brand photos, the second that we had
Yes.
to show up online and show our faces, that's when we would cower. And
Yes.
I really wanted to unpack why we held such contempt for our physical selves and why that was keeping us silent and small in pursuit of these big ambitions. And I really uncovered some staggering stats, if you will. One of them that comes to mind is that in the United States, 65% of women surveyed say that they have opted out of life activities because of how they felt about their body. And that could be applying for a promotion, that could be
Mm.
stepping on stage, public speaking, that could be things in their own family life, like going to the beach. And I just thought, how awful that we collectively have missed out on solutions to problems that we desperately need, services that we are pining for, and
Mhm.
voices that need to be
Mhm.
amplified because the women who could bring that message forward were too afraid to show up in the light because of how they felt about their bodies. And I thought,
Mm.
no, no, we have to be done with that.
Yeah. So you alluded to that you personally had that experience, it sounds like, where you didn't want to show up fully as yourself. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, I absolutely. Part of this book is it's cultural critique, but also layered with personal narrative because I am not apart from any of the clients that I've witnessed. I've had my own journey with my own body. Over the last year and a half or so, I've personally lost a pretty significant amount of weight.
Mm.
And it seems counterintuitive, but I really thought that, on the other side of that, that I would be able to release all of that shame. And it turns out that that's not true. And
Yeah.
I got to the other side of that weight loss and thought, I really need to unpack why I have held such contempt for my home
Mm.
because I just turned 40, and so I'm
Mm.
like, I know, man, I know my body is not done changing. I know that it's going to continue to change and continue to evolve, and I do not wish to continue to chase a goalpost that keeps on
Yeah,
moving.
for sure.
So I did this work to really set out to unpack why. Why do we feel this way? And I'll not be surprised to know that the answer to that is patriarchy, capitalism, and racism. And
Mm.
so I'm really unpacking some big, big topics. And I think that this book, for so many, for myself also, is giving us permission to really set down those standards and expectations and realize that everything, I mean, even in my world of branding, everything is about how we assign meaning. And
Yes.
I've just simply decided to assign meaning differently, and there's so much freedom in that.
Yes. Oh, seriously. Yes, this is big work. I
Yeah.
mean, this is really big work that you're talking about. And essentially, it's the work must be done, right? Because, like you said, there are so many women who are staying silent and small while in pursuit of these big ambitions. Not exactly what you said, but I wrote that down because,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it.
in my experience, this is why we have such a lack of representation is
Mm.
because of, I mean, there are certainly external barriers in place and
Yes.
systemic barriers in
Yep.
place. But I think that one of the biggest ones that we actually can control is what's happening in our own brains, right?
Mm.
Like you were
Yep.
saying, so assigning meaning differently. It's like that's huge. That's a huge thing to even take on, but you can take it on. We
Yeah.
can take it on and we can take it on together. And I think when you know that you're in community with other people who are also choosing to assign meaning differently, it creates an energy behind it, that you're not pushing this boulder up the hill all by yourself.
Oh my goodness. I actually have a small excerpt out of the book that speaks to that. I'd love
Please,
to share it with you if that's
please
okay.
do. Yes,
Okay.
please do.
So this actually comes out of one of my favorite chapters, which is chapter 4. It's called Prioritizing the Female Gaze. And in this chapter, I was really hoping to better understand who we choose to show up for. And then I realized that my work in branding around understanding audiences was helping me to unpack that. So I unpack,
Mm,
where does the female gaze come from? Where does the male gaze come from? And how might I just choose to shift who I'm showing up for from the male gaze to the female gaze? And so this is at the end of that chapter. It says, once I realized that my work understanding audiences for my clients has a direct impact on how I show up and consequently how I feel my body, I've been able to simply release my attachment to the male gaze. How we feel about anything has to do with the story and the meaning associated with it. Deciding that men simply aren't my audience has given me so much permission to express myself freely and abandon some of the negative talk that I've had around my body.
mm.
The answer around standards, preferences, expectations all vary depending on who you ask and whose opinion you're validating. And I've just decided that I'm no longer asking men for their opinion.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I really discovered in this writing process.
How freeing is that?
So
A-
freeing.
And I mean, the female gaze, I mean, you wrote the book literally, but the female gaze, when I think about women and how we see ourselves and our self-image, it is often so intertwined, it's braided with the male gaze that sometimes I think we don't even know what our own gaze is because we have adopted,
Yeah.
the male gaze. And so it's like to
Yeah.
actually look in the mirror is a challenge. It's a challenge to tease
Yeah.
that out.
You're so right. I think that, and there's so much evidence of that. And I do talk about that a little bit in that chapter about how, we really need to investigate our own preferences, our own desires, and start to see like, where did they come from? What's the origin of that? I like to
Yeah.
talk about the come from a lot because something can vary differently depending on the intention and the origin of that. So, where did that desire to look that way come from? And is that
Yeah.
actually coming from me, or is that coming from an experience or an expectation that someone else has placed on me? And I think the more that we can really unpack that and have that understanding for ourselves, the more that we feel empowered to make different kinds of decisions for ourselves. So, absolutely.
Yes, I love that. One of the things that I teach that I'm constantly having to teach myself and remind myself and practice myself over and over. I'm in no way a master of this, but it actually ties back to part of the beginning of our conversation, which was when you were talking about really knowing yourself. And
Mm,
the body speaks, right? Like it speaks. And
yeah.
one of the ways that I've learned to tease out, what do I think? What do I admire? What do I think feels good and right for my skin, in my body?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that because it's hard to say, well, like, of course I want a booty that looks like Beyonce, right? Or like, or J-Lo, I'll take that. And like looking at these pictures of J-Lo at 52 in a bikini, and you're like, hell yes, I want that. Like, and that looks nothing like my body whatsoever, right? Or like when I was a kid, and I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, and it was like Cindy Crawford. And it's so funny how, and by the way, Cindy Crawford's legs are like as long as both of my legs put together. Never going to happen. But
Yeah.
the point is that, we know that the beauty standard changes. And, we were just watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation or whatever that is. And there's this scene, where Chevy
Yeah.
Chase is like drooling all over this, like what this
Sales
underwear.
clerk. Yeah.
Yeah. But like he's having this like dream-like vision later on in the movie, and she's in a bathing suit, and this woman has no ass whatsoever, right? And
Yeah.
that was totally the thing back in the 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
no booty. And then all of a sudden it's like all about the booty, right? So like you said, it's like this ever-evolving, changing goalpost, fully packed in racism, like all of
Yep.
it, right, coming together. But so, and then it's like, okay, well, then what do I think? Like, what is my ideal? Because I hold great value in beauty, but what is beauty to me? And that opportunity to even recognize that we get to decide and define
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But also, then how do you know when it's it versus what you've been told is it. And the one thing that I have figured out with my body in all of the years of, my body shrinking and growing and shrinking and growing due to yo-yo dieting and overeating and the whole thing is that there is a place, and I think this goes with age and it doesn't matter how old you are, there is a place where you feel at home in your body. And I mean that on like a
Mm.
physical level.
Yeah.
So like when you sit in your body and when you really feel yourself into your body, there are times when you can feel at home. And there are times when you feel like this is just off. This part isn't right. And you
Yeah.
don't have to explain it to anyone. But when you become familiar with that, that can start to guide your decisions around what is desirable for you in your skin, as
Yeah.
opposed to what everybody else is telling you should be.
Oh my goodness, I have so much to say and add to that path of thinking. The first thing that I really want to make sure that I like highlight, and you're definitely saying this, and just to offer another way of clarifying the same, is I think that we do ourselves a massive disservice when we try to apply a universal truth.
Yes.
And we have a natural propensity to wanting to do this, and we want to look at things in this like very black and white binary where we say like there's a right way and a wrong way. And if
Yeah.
you're doing it the wrong way, that must mean that I'm doing it the right way. However, people get very triggered when they see other people doing something a different way, and they
Yes.
think, oh gosh, well, if she's doing it the right way, then that must mean something about the way that I'm doing it. So if she's right, then I'm wrong. And there's got to be
Yes.
this like polarizing effect. And I think that we need to adapt a little bit of nuance and recognize that there's multiple truths that can be true at the same time, and that someone else's experience being right doesn't necessarily mean that my experience is wrong, and that we can
Yes.
adapt this space for a plethora of
Yeah.
range and nuance. I think that we need to work on that a little bit more. And
100%.
then the other thing that you were talking about, like I love this, and I do talk quite a bit about like the changing body trends in the book, is honestly, I think that we need to stop applying the morality of body to a particular body. Because if, like, let's talk J-Lo for just a second, because that was a
Yeah.
fantastic example. Woman looks like, I'm not going to die. She looks fantastic. Like, she
Totally.
looks great. And also, at the
Yep.
same time, the time,
Yep.
the priority, the
Yeah.
dedication, the access to resources, the
Yeah.
things that she has access to, and the way she chooses to spend her time mirror that body. And I
Yeah.
think that it's unfair for all of us collectively to somehow place a moral worth on how she chooses to spend her time versus how I choose to spend my time. Now,
Totally.
if I chose, and there again, going back to the first thing that I wanted to mention, the nuance first, because it plays in here, there's nothing wrong with a woman, be it JLo or anybody else, who says,
Exactly.
I want to be in the gym for 2 hours every single day. I mean, I'm going to be
Yeah.
very like extreme and
Yeah.
stereotypical here for the sake of,
And she has
but
a personal chef and dietitian and yeah, but yeah.
yeah, even okay. So even if we take all of those like plethora of resources out and we talk about like your average mom, and she says, I'm going to spend my time doing this so that I can have this result. And that is her prerogative
Yep.
to have her priorities be arranged in that way. And it's also my prerogative to say, you know what, I'm probably not going to have the tightest butt.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to have the flattest stomach,
Yeah.
because I understand that if in my body, in order to have that result, this is what it would require of me. And I have just chosen to arrange my priorities differently.
Yeah.
But if I can, exercise and move my body and prepare good food in a way that feels really good for me, but it's never going to result in that output, then I'm actually okay with that, because I've chosen to arrange my life differently. And
Yeah.
I've chosen to prioritize my time and different things in a way that works and is meaningful for me, and that doesn't place me at a lower rung in the morality ladder than it does someone who chooses to be in the gym multiple hours every single week and day. And that's totally okay. And what I'm saying is both of those are good and acceptable,
Yeah.
but we have to be able to arrange our lives and our priorities in a way that aligns with who we are, what we want in the world, what we're going after, and also with our own resources and circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never actually gotten any strong pushback in this arena, but in my own brain, I'm often like, this is so anti-feminist. I help women to stop overeating so that they can release unwanted weight. But the truth
Yeah.
is that, and I always say, I don't give a shit about your weight. I
Yeah.
truly don't. What I care about is that you feel empowered with food. And for so many of us, myself
Yeah.
included, food
Yeah.
was one of the most disempowering things that I have to deal with every day, multiple times a day. And I didn't know how to reclaim my own sense of self and identity with food. It felt like food had more power than I did. So my work really is all about power, but the byproduct is often is the release of unwanted weight, because the weight is there because of the overeating, and the overeating is there for reasons that have nothing to do with whether you should be dieting or your morality or any of that, right? It's something on a much, much deeper, more complex level that we uncover and address, and it's done. But the whole kind of polarization, right, where it's like,
Yeah.
we are going to be criticized if we want to lose weight, and we're going to be
Mhm.
criticized if we decide to prioritize differently, right? Like, it's like we are going to get criticized no matter what. And what I'm noticing about you, Sarah, and this is something I can just hear some of my listeners writing this off. I can hear some people maybe saying things like, well, yeah, Sarah and Leah, but they're so confident. Like, they can just decide that they are going to assign meaning differently. I'm not like that. And I'm actually specifically thinking of my sister. So hopefully she listens to this podcast. But my sister would be like, yeah, but Leah, that's just who you are. Like, I can't do that. I'm not strong in that way, or I'm not confident in that way that I can just assign meaning, or I can just prioritize differently and really not give a fuck what other people think about it.
Yeah.
Do you come across that? And how do you address that with, I'm imagining friends, family, clients?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's total bullshit, personally. I think that we can make whatever choices we want and we can assign whatever meaning we
Mm,
want. And
mm,
if it were your sister or
mhm.
whomever is saying that, I would really ask them to dive a little deeper and ask them what they are getting out of choosing that story and what would it look
Mm,
like to choose a different one. Because
yeah.
at the end of the day, if that is the truth that you're anchoring in, and you can accept that someone else can have a truth that's different, but you're choosing differently for yourself, like there has to be some self accountability there to say, like, I'm actually choosing that truth for myself.
Mm,
And just as easily as I'm choosing that truth, I can choose a different truth. And so
yeah.
you have to start to understand, what am I getting out of it? What am I benefiting from in choosing that narrative? And what would
Yeah.
it look like for me to set that one down and start to choose a different one?
Yeah.
Whatever we decide is good or beautiful or whatever, and in the context of this conversation, the perfect body, if you will, has completely changed over millennia and has always changed. It changes even from generation and decade to decade. And we need to start recognizing that we are more impressionable than we'd like to think that we are,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that what we believe is good and beautiful and admirable and worthy is oftentimes dictated by market and oftentimes dictated by products being sold. And it has absolutely nothing to do with our own body. I have found so much freedom in looking at the history of body trends, which shouldn't even be a thing, and recognized,
Right.
man, if I was in ancient Greece, they would be carving my body into
100%.
carving
Yes.
my body into stone. So I just so happen to have the body and the genetics and the
Yeah.
makeup that would have been considered ideal in that time frame, but not considered ideal in this time frame. And so why am I allowing other
Yeah.
people to dictate how I feel about myself?
Yeah.
And what if, this is a wild, like I have lost a lot of weight, but I'm more than likely never going to have, a super flat stomach or a small butt or like all of these. Like relatively fit in the way that I feel good about, but
Mm-hmm.
I got a little apron belly, a little
Yeah.
belly. And
Yeah.
what if the audacity? What if I just decided
Mm-hmm.
that that belly is the cutest thing
Thank
you
you very
have
much.
ever seen?
Yes.
Ever. And what
Yeah.
if I decided that like seeing my belly in a tight dress makes the outfit better? And
Yeah.
what if I've decided all of these things about myself and just apply that meaning, because I can apply that meaning just as easily as I can apply the one that says it's bad.
That's right.
And someone else handed me that one. So I'm just choosing for myself.
You
And
are. And you're choosing you're choosing your thinking for yourself.
I'm just choosing for myself how to apply meaning and everything. If you it's just once, it's kind of like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every single thing that we have, that we put in our lives, is about how we apply meaning
Yeah.
and how we define it. Because language and communication and definition is all about applied meaning. And I'm just choosing to define it differently.
Yes. So true. So your book, Do It Fat, what are you hoping that your readers take away from that book?
Oh, gosh. The hope is that they feel permission to show up in the biggest, boldest, most unapologetic versions of themselves in the body that they have today. And I say I love that you kind of alluded even in the polarity of, well, I feel anti-feminist if I say that I want to lose weight, or, I'm like abandoning the body positive movement if I say that, I'm
Exactly.
not feeling comfortable in my body.
Yep.
And I think that so many women feel stuck there. And the point of this book is not telling you what you should or shouldn't do with your own body. That's up for
Yeah.
you to decide. But the book is telling you that you have permission to choose to go after your big, audacious dreams and goals and visions in the body that you have today, regardless of what it looks like in the past or what it looks like today or what it will look like in the future. And it's starting to really just unpack the reasons why we feel the way that we feel about our body and how it's not our fault and we can choose differently.
What do you think would happen to so many of the women that I work with have daughters, and the women that I work with all have had a struggle in their own words, struggle with food and body. And whenever we talk about it, especially I always say my clients have PhDs in weight loss because they've done
Mm-hmm.
every diet in the book. They've
Yep.
got, all the things. And I always bring up their daughters because for me, the whole reason I do this work is actually because of my passion around the empowerment of teenage girls specifically. And it's a
Yeah.
whole long story about how this whole thing evolved. But when I talk to them about their daughters, I mean, 9 out of 10 clients, maybe even 10 out of 10 clients will say, oh, I never talk about this in front of my daughter. I'm never self-deprecating in front of my daughter. My daughter, I don't ever talk about this because their intention is to protect their daughter from the
Yeah.
bullshit that
Yep.
they've been experiencing. I eventually will tell them that their daughters are watching and that it doesn't matter. Their words and their actions are different. For me, I remember, and I'm always afraid that my mom's going to hear me say this one day. But I remember, my mom very quietly at the table, but she had a little notebook next to her where she would track her Weight Watchers points, right? So even though she maybe wasn't saying anything to me about my body and my weight, she didn't have to because I was learning by watching her what's important about women, what we need to
Yep.
focus our time and attention on. And meanwhile, my dad is like, slurping down this huge bowl of pasta and,
Yep.
like not thinking twice about the Weight
Yep.
Watchers points. But our girls are watching, teenage girls are watching. And
Yeah.
I think that as women, we want to solve the problem for ourselves and so that we can change the trajectory for the next generation of girls. But so often the way that we're going about solving the problem is actually just reinforcing the problem, right? And we have the
Yeah.
best of intentions. But I would imagine that your book, Do It Fat, if women could read that book and they could actually decide, choose differently, to think differently about themselves and their
Yeah.
bodies. And I always tell clients, a lot of times my clients worry that they're like, I don't want to love myself. I don't want to accept myself as I am right now. I will love and accept myself once I've changed. And of course, the approach
Mm.
that I take is you actually have to love yourself right now in order for anything sustainable
Oh, girl,
to
it doesn't work
change.
that way. Yeah.
And I did once, I tried to do one February. I tried to make the month a radical self-love month. Oh my God, they rebelled so hard. They're like, we're not doing that. And I realized it was because I tried to take them from self-loathing to self-love, which is way too big of a leap, right?
Yeah.
We needed more
It's
of a
a big
laddered
leap.
approach. But
Mm.
the point is that for women to read a book like yours, that's basically saying, look, you actually can turn this around, but it starts in here. It starts with your thinking and yourself and how you think about yourself and your self-image. I'm imagining that that would, if women, well, of course, this is part of my mission, but if women started there where you're talking about, Sara,
Yeah.
that is actually what would change the trajectory for the next generation of girls.
I think you're oh gosh, yes, you're nailing it. And I'm so aligned in how we're thinking about this. I listen, I love a good intention. I think that we're making progress because a lot of times our parents weren't doing the things that we're trying to do
Yeah.
now, right? Like
Yeah.
we're making progress. We're saying, I'm paying attention to what I'm saying to my daughter, where previous generations weren't even doing that. So like
Right.
I want to like applaud the intentionality and applaud the effort and applaud the progress. I think that that matters and I don't want to diminish that in any way. And also at the
Yeah.
same time, what I'm looking for is not a band-aid of progress. What I'm looking for is the dismantleization of this thinking altogether.
Yeah.
And I also want to speak to the fact, like, yes, I do think it's incredibly important that we show the next generation of girls. I have a 12-year-old son,
Yeah.
and it will be damned if I'm creating the next generation of men who
Yes.
believe these things about women. And
Yes.
because, I mean, you can see the color of my skin. I am a white woman. So I am raising, and my husband is also white, raising what will eventually be an upper middle class white man in America.
Yeah.
And that man is going to come with an abundance of privileges. And he had better know and understand how to leverage those and use those in a way that advances women forward. So
Mhm.
I'm not yes, I'm not talking poorly about my body in front of my son, but I'm also not acting poorly about my body in front of my
Right.
son. I am
Yeah.
also making sure that we are reinforcing our interactions with other people. And when we hear other people speaking poorly about other people's bodies, that we are like having a conversation about that. When I hear him saying something or behaving in a way that it doesn't align with that value in our family foundation, then I'm like addressing that appropriately. Like we're dismantling this every day from the inside out. And it isn't just about the words you say. I think that's a really important start. But if you don't actually have that feeling that you've adapted that belief system into your own being, if you will, then it will find other ways to permeate out of you. And so
So
this is
true.
deep self-work that we are doing. And I do think that there is a big leap from loathing your body all the way to loving your body. And I can totally understand. I'm sure that you've talked to your clients about this, but perhaps we can start with a little bit of neutrality.
Exactly. That's exactly where
Perhaps,
we have to go is I have a body.
perhaps,
Yeah.
perhaps I have a body, and the stories that I've been told about why it is not worthy did not come from me. And I am
Mhm.
actively going to work on dismantling those beliefs until they no longer exist within my being.
Yeah. Right. Yes. I love everything about that. I'm so grateful for the work that you do. I'm grateful that you're a writer because your book is so needed. And you and I, we have such parallel messaging. We're so aligned. And I hate writing. So thank you for writing the book.
You're welcome.
I
You're
can't wait
welcome.
to tell everyone about it. And, one of the examples I was thinking about earlier as we're kind of wrapping up the show today is I actually have a portrait of Lizzo, the singer, the
Yeah,
performer.
yeah.
You can't see it on my camera, but it's in my office and it's been here for years. And the reason I have her is because I am probably her biggest fan and I love her. But the second reason is actually because to me, she has epitomized, especially if I talk about Lizzo, kind of pre the weight loss that she's recently had that I don't
Yeah.
have an opinion about. It's her body. She gets to do whatever the hell she
Yes.
wants with it.
Yes.
But I am specifically talking about the Lizzo that was pre-weight loss.
Yeah.
To me, she epitomized what I would always say to my clients is she chose her own thinking. Like you said, like, by your apron belly and like, what if you
Yeah.
decided? Like, that's
Right. Like
exactly what she did. She decided, I am God's gift. I mean, that's what she sings about.
Yeah.
Her lyrics are about wanting to marry herself because she is so sexy. And I'm like, and she is the opposite of J-Lo in that way, right? In terms of her shape and her size. But the point there is that I would be willing to bet that Lizzo loved herself more than J-Lo, potentially. Who knows? But that's irrelevant. The point is that she chose her thinking about her body exactly as it was in that moment. When other
Yeah.
people might have said, hey, the narrative is that your body is undesirable at the size and shape that it is. And
Yeah.
her narrative was like, I don't really give a fuck what your narrative is about my body. And I'm telling you, it made her so sexy. Just that sense of
Yeah.
self-love,
And
self-adoration.
I think it's a beautiful example. And I actually did reference Lizzo in the book too, because she is just such a beautiful example of that, regardless. And I think it's important actually for us to see like the trajectory of women who have been much larger, who are choosing a different body and being able to hold the truth still, because
Yes.
her body in its form before is just as worthy as it is in the form today.
Yes.
And if that is the logic I'm applying, then I can apply that to myself too.
Yes.
So we need more examples of body evolution, I
Yeah.
think. We need more examples of women who are saying like, yeah, I can be worthy in that season just as much as I'm worthy in this
Yes.
season, and kind of remove the binary altogether and just
Yes.
invite more room for nuance for sure.
I love that. And I think that if there's a takeaway that I can offer today, which I wouldn't be surprised if you also shared this with people as well, but I always tell people that we have to write our own counter narrative because the dominant narrative, it's strong and it's subconscious and it's absolutely everywhere. And one of the things that I do, it's a small thing, but one of the things that I do, besides things like hang up portraits of Lizzo so that I can think about her every day, but also like I have Pinterest boards. I have one in particular called Beauty Beyond 27. And it's where I put images that I find of women who don't look like they are 20, who look like they are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, right? And women who are clearly beautiful, but in very unconventional ways. That's every time I find an image like that, I'm dropping it on that board. And I try to make sure to go in and look at that board from time to time to make sure that the narrative that I am actively choosing to receive is a narrative that I'm choosing, that I can say, no, I do know that there is beauty beyond being 27 years old. And I do know that there is beauty in all shapes and sizes. And I'm actively infiltrating my own brain with that imagery.
Oh, I think it's so beautiful. And not only are you putting that in the forefront of yourself and allowing yourself to receive that and see that representation, but you are, by even, I'm just going to use Pinterest for a second, like even the action of pinning that puts that out
Yes.
into the world.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
true.
this is like a big cycle. What
Yeah.
we see is what we put out into the world, is what we see is what we put out into the world. And for us to say, like, actually, I'm going to shift that cycle, and what I want to put out into the world is different so that what I can receive is different. And the more people that are willing to like
Yes.
disrupt the existing cycle is what is going to create perpetual change in the future.
That's exactly it. Oh my God. And we didn't even get to talk about your nonprofit Chicks Who Give a Hoot, but I can tell that I would talk to you for hours and forever.
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, what I can tell you is that my hope, much like I said, the undercurrent of my work is really to inspire women who own for-profit businesses to make a deeper impact, to live out their brand values in real time, and to connect with organizations that are doing really great work. I think so many times we believe that in order for us, I hear women say this all the time, in order for us to make a great impact, oh, I should go start a nonprofit. And the reality is that there's probably one already out there doing exceptional work. And so how can I intentionally bake thoughtfulness and impact into the work that I'm doing that supports my values in real time? and recognize that female entrepreneurs are some of the most powerful and influential people in the world. And if we collectively chose to leverage that power for good, like, we can make an incredible change. And I could go on that note, but that's kind of the essence of the nonprofit. And we do a live event in March every single year here in Phoenix. And we're directly in the planning stages of our 26th event. And I'm super excited to invite more women into the room together here in Phoenix to celebrate that bridge between impact for female-owned businesses and nonprofit organizations doing good work.
That's awesome, Sara. Where can people find you? Because I know people are going to want to find you after this.
Oh my goodness. There are so many places, but I have collected all of them on my personal website, which is Sara with no H. So Sara Chambers, Chambers Creative. So sarachamberscreative.com. And that is where you can find all of the various links and things that I do, from the agency over to the nonprofit, the book, and my speaking as well.
So wonderful. Sara, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been such a pleasure to have you.
Oh, it's been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.